Welcome to Session 1, Understanding and Developing the edTPA. My name is Sarah Joswick, and I am looking forward to supporting your successful submission of the edTPA portfolio this semester. Please know that the fastest way to reach me at any time is through email. You can email me at jozwyk@uwm.edu. Let's begin with the big picture. The Canvas site is set up as a backwards mapped task analysis. The edTPA is a high-stakes test, and it is known to provoke some anxiety in teacher candidates. Nevertheless, I have confidence that you will triumph over the edTPA submission. You have experienced lesson planning, and you can navigate Canvas. I'm ready to support you, so I know that you've got this. To summarize, clarify, and be 100% explicit, if you complete the steps on the Canvas site, you will be able to complete the 5 course objectives, understand the components, logistics, and requirements of the edTPA, write an objective and detailed description of the school and classroom context, gain peer support to help you prepare artifacts and write commentaries, and learn how to compress and select a video, read and learn from exemplars. You will upload drafts of your completed lesson plans, your task 1, 2, and 3 commentary, and I will review these for completion, and I'll give general feedback on areas of concern that span across submissions. Unfortunately, I'm not able to provide feedback on the content of your context for learning lesson plan or commentaries. Pearson's professional guidelines expressly prohibit university faculty from providing such feedback. So anticipate that I will only ask probing questions that mainly take the form of how does the content that you are writing compare with what you see in the rubrics for this task. And this is why the course is graded on the basis of completion. Some key terminology in the edTPA handbook is the term focus learner, which refers to the target student or student of focus for whom you have developed lesson plans. Learning goal is a short-term learner outcome that is achieved over time by meeting related lesson objectives. The outcome of the learning segment, what the focus learner will know or be able to do by the end of 3 to 5 lessons. This includes acquisition, fluency, maintenance, or generalization. A learning segment is a set of 3 to 5 lessons that build one upon another toward a learning goal with a clearly defined beginning and end. Aligned means that individualized education plan goals, standards if applicable, lesson objectives, plan supports, and learning tasks and materials are aligned when they consistently address the same or similar learning goal. The alignment may represent steps to move toward the IEP goal, for example, working on letter-sound relationships to achieve the goal of reading fluency. Engaging the learner means using instructional and motivational strategies that promote active involvement of the learner in the learning task designed to support acquisition and application of knowledge and skills related to specific lesson objectives. Engagement in learning contrasts with learner participation in learning tasks that are not well designed and/or implemented and do not increase learning. Communication skill. Specific ways that communication is used by learners to participate in learning tasks and/or to demonstrate their learning. The skill can focus on understanding or interpreting communication or on its actual use. According to the Special Education Handbook, you will teach content consistent with what you normally teach, planning and instructing as you would normally teach. However, for this assessment, you will develop an in-depth case study of one learner, your focus learner, from your class, group, or caseload. The focus learner should have multiple learning needs, meaning an IEP, so that you can demonstrate your ability to meet the complex needs of a learner. The most important decisions that you will make for the edTPA are, number 1, identifying your focus learner, and number 2, selecting the learning goal for your learning segment. Your focus learner selection involves these critical decisions. Choose a student who has multiple learning needs, meaning they have an IEP. Choose a student for whom you can gain video permission. Can he, she, or they be filmed? Choose a student whose attendance is regular and consistent. And choose a student who is working on academic skills. For the selection of a learning goal, think about number 1, what is reasonable and achievable by the end of 3 to 5 lessons? And number 2, what an academic focus might be if the focus learner is working on academic skills. Finally, number 3, keep in mind that the IEP is a long-term goal, so you must break that long-term goal into objectives or benchmarks by adjusting the criterion, conditions, or task difficulty. Let's look at some examples of learning goals. For early childhood special education, one IEP for Larry, the focus learner, is that Larry will sort, classify, and describe objects by their attributes, such as their color, shape, and size, from 1 out of 5 to 4 out of 5 opportunities. Let's break this down. The learning goal is Larry will sort and describe objects by their color, shape, and size. Notice we're not including classify, and we can control our input so that we limit the amount of sorting or describing by selecting just certain colors, certain shapes, and certain sizes, maybe big and small. In middle childhood, early adolescence, special education example, the IEP goals, the student will add and subtract fractions with like and unlike denominators. See how we break this down for the learning goal? The student will add and subtract fractions with like denominators by using visual models. Here's an early adolescence example. The IEP goal is Ben will improve his math skills in the general curriculum by achieving 75% accuracy on the following benchmarks. Take notes in class, independently refer to his notes to help him complete a task when he is confused. When given a step process, follow each step to complete the problem, and use formulas to complete the problem. Well, we have to package that into one learning goal that can be reasonably achieved within 3 to 5 lessons. Here's how we've distilled that. Ben will compute the area, circumference, and radius of a circle. This aligns more clearly to a specific academic skill, but he can use the steps of the IEP goal to help achieve that learning goal. Prior to planning your lessons, you want to think through what that learning goal is. It should be an academic goal if the student is working on any academic skills, even if they're on an alternate or extended curriculum. If the student seems to be able to achieve academically at any level, then they must have an academic goal as their learning goal on the edTPA. Social and behavioral goals will only be acceptable for students with significant disabilities who have no academic learning goals. So if the focus learner is working on academic content, even if it's extended alternate curriculum content, you will select an academic learning goal whether or not there is a related IEP goal. Here are your options. Option 1, if the focus learner is working on academic content, select a learning goal related to the IEP goal in literacy, math, social studies, or science. Option 2, if there are no academic IEP goals and the focus learner only has behavioral goals, then select a learning goal related to the academic content in literacy, math, science, or social studies. Option 3, if the focus learner is not working on any academic content at all, select a learning goal related to an IEP goal. Given these options and your knowledge of the placement that you're currently in, which student stands out to you as a viable focus learner? What might be the area that you choose to write a learning goal? Prior to planning your lessons around that learning goal, you'll want to collect baseline data that directly relates to that learning goal. Baseline data should describe the focus learner's level of skill related to the learning goal and the need for planned supports. Examples of baseline data sources could be pretests, work samples, a skills checklist, observational or anecdotal notes, and information from the cooperating teacher. You'll want to plan your lessons using the backward design model so that your assessments can progress, so the students' skills advance from their baseline performance level toward attainment of that learning goal for those 3 to 5 lessons. With backwards design, we begin with the end in mind. First, think about the content priorities. What do you want the learner to know and be able to do? Concepts are often represented by nouns. These might be things that you want the student to know. Skills are often represented by verbs. These would be things you want the focus learner to do. Next, plan your assessments. How will you know that the focus learner is able to demonstrate their understanding? Last, plan how you will teach. Decide which research-based strategies to use. Each lesson in your learning segment needs a specific and measurable objective. Check that your lesson objectives are clear, observable, and measurable. Think about using a condition, behavior, and criterion. For example, given 10 high-frequency words, the focus learner will orally read the correct word within 3 seconds. We need alignment. Thoughtful planning to ensure this alignment happens should consider the IEP goal, the learning goal, the lesson objectives, the assessments, and our instructional practices. We're going to plan supports so that the student can reasonably achieve that learning goal by the end of 3 to 5 lessons. We also need to think through what kind of language demands or communication demands are included in our lesson so that the student can successfully participate and demonstrate learning. We want to identify a communication skill that relates directly to the learning goal. It is better to choose an expressive communication skill than a receptive one. Expressive communication skills involve having the student speak or write. We can capture video evidence of this and reflect on it. It's harder to show up in the video that the child is using receptive communication. Be specific in describing how the student will use that communication skill. Will they retell, explain, answer, select the right sign? Plan for one moment in your lesson that the student will use that communication skill and that you will respond to the focus learner's use of that skill. You also want to plan for engagement. Plan lessons that allow the learner to actively participate. It's not a good idea to plan a heavy lecture for your edTPA. It's easier to show the student engagement when students are working in a small group, but if you work one-to-one with your focus learner, that is allowable. So you can do one-to-one instruction. Just know that you're going to need to keep that pacing and allow sufficient opportunities to respond so that you can show the focus learner actively engaging and deepening learning. Your lesson plans must provide evidence of the supports that are specific to the learning goal and that align to what the content of the student's IEP is. If you are co-teaching right now, you might work with your co-teacher or team on a typical basis to implement instruction. You might default to the one teach, one assist model, but for the edTPA, you must be the one taking the lead in that video segment, so you have to be leading the lesson. If you're working in a resource room setting, it will be necessary that you connect with general education teachers to plan for lessons that you can support in that resource room. The first step in beginning your edTPA is to think about the context for learning. So you've got a focus learner in mind, you've got a possible learning goal. Typically, candidates select math, reading, or writing as the primary focus area for their learning segment. So now what you want to do is describe the context for learning. Think about what happens in that context when you are working with that focus learner to reach that learning goal. That's the scope of the context. We don't need to know about like what the coffee tastes like in the teacher's lounge, what the parking conditions are like, your total caseload size, all of the needs of all of the students on that caseload. We really only want to know about those dynamics of you and the focus learner in that block of time that you're working on this particular learning goal. Some parameters are that you have no more than 4 pages. You have to write in Arial 11 font within the brackets on the template. Don't delete the brackets. Scores only evaluate on rubrics, but there is no rubric for the context for learning, meaning this is not scored. This is instead your only chance to help the scorer understand the context in which you are planning, instructing, and then reflecting on learning outcomes. There's a template on Canvas for you to fill out information, and there are samples as samples on Canvas as well.